You're a detective, and you find a woman dead on her couch. Now, the house is in perfect shape, meaning there was no fight or struggle. You notice she was stabbed and that the butcher knife is missing from its place. But it's nowhere to be found, meaning the killer probably took it. You take a look outside and see her footprints leading from the car to the door, but you don't see the killer's footprints. No one could have come or gone without leaving tracks. Then it hits you. You check the weather. It only started snowing 2 days ago. Before that, it was warm and dry when the killer likely snuck in. He must have been living in the house for days before she came back from the trip when he jumped out and surprised her. Case closed, right? But then it dawns on you. There are no footprints around the house, meaning the killer never left, and this is why you couldn't find the knife. You're a detective. Pinch the toothpick between your thumb and middle finger, then pull your middle finger inwards to build up tension, while the friction in your skin keeps the toothpick in place. And when you snap your middle finger forward, it releases the energy all at once, blasting the toothpick forward, fast enough to pierce through cardboard and turning a toothpick into a ninja-style weapon. Pinch the toothpick.
ما تزعلوا مني وقت تجوا.
A clamp would hold the pot in place, while hidden hinges inside the stove would turn, swinging the stovetop the other way, canceling out the movement of the boat. This kept the food inside the pot, and when the boat settled, the stove would swing back, letting you cook while being seasick. A clamp would hold the You would take turns removing matches, and whoever takes the last match loses. To win, let your opponent go first, and group each row into 4s, 2s, and 1s in your head, pairing up each group with its match in another row. And after every move your opponent makes, take whatever matches have no pair to restore the balance. Keep doing this until your opponent is forced to take the last match and loses, which is why going second makes you impossible to beat. You would take His foot slipped, and he was 36 stories above the ground. He slammed onto a tiny platform hanging from the crane cables, while his shoes dropped into the dark below. You see, he had climbed the crane for the midnight view, but now he was stranded in the middle of the night. Now, the cables were too thin to grip, and the ground was so far down, the cars looked like ants. So he stayed there for around 7 hours, screaming for help while the streets were empty, until he was finally rescued the next morning. Crack the egg, squeeze the bottle, and press the opening lightly against the yolk. Next, release your grip, and since the yolk seals the opening, the pressure inside drops, and the air outside forces the yolk up into the bottle, while the egg white stays behind. Now, once the egg white is cooked, you can add the yolk back in for a perfectly runny egg. He fed the owl a vitamin mix and started giving it to more and more. But one by one, they started falling over until 42 of them dropped dead. Now, the man was confused until he read the label on the vitamins. You see, earlier he had taken a photo of an empty package and sent it to another company to copy the formula, since it would be cheaper than buying it retail. But he didn't realize the label had a typo, listing grams instead of milligrams. So when the company followed the recipe, the new vitamin powder was 1,000 times stronger than the original, which ended up killing the owls. As the replica was built, they saved cost by deleting tiny sections of its length, making the ship shorter. To film it, they dug a pool with a 40-foot well in the middle, and when the ship had to sink, they pulled one section down with cables while hidden floats stopped it from crashing. Another section was attached to a giant motor, which rotated the whole thing to 90 degrees, forcing extras to fall into the water. And interior scenes were carefully flooded with pumps to shoot one of the most expensive movies ever made. As the replica, he waves down a driver, pointing at their wheel, shouting that it's about to fall off. And once they pull over, he gets in and drives it a few feet while jerking the wheel, making it look like it's wobbling. He tells them to get back in the car and turn the wheel so he can fix it. Then, suddenly, the wobble is gone. He demands payment, and you pay as he moves on to the next car. He waves down a driver. The foxes moved straight toward the penguins before killing dozens of them, and they did this every year until there were only 4 penguins left. Now, a local farmer had sheepdogs that guarded his chickens, so he decided to send one over to the penguins to help. And that year, the foxes were too afraid to attack, meaning not a single penguin was killed. Since then, other dogs have been trained, and every year they protect the colony, which has grown back to nearly 200 penguins. A fox. Lay your shirt flat and imagine a line across the middle. Then imagine another line down from the shoulder to the bottom edge. Now pinch where the 2 lines cross with one hand and grip the shoulder with the other. Without letting go, cross the same hand over and grab the bottom edge on the same line. Now uncross your arms and the shirt folds over itself in the air. Lay the loose sleeve down first and set the shirt over the sleeve so it forms a neat rectangle in 2 seconds. Lay your shirt. They would inject cement through a small cut above your skull and shape it from the outside to make it rounder. Then your scalp would be sewn back together, and when it healed, the top of your head would be taller than before, which could make your face look smaller, so you look younger and a lot more attractive. But a lot of these clinics are done in beauty salons with untrained operators, meaning you could lose hair or even end up with a severe infection. They would inject cement. They pulled the fruit from the traveler's bag and set it on fire until it was burned. You see, a fly had laid eggs in the fruit, which hatched into maggots and ate it from the inside. And since it was brought into another country, if it had gotten through, those maggots could have crawled out and settled into the soil before emerging as flies. Then they could spread to nearby farms, laying more eggs that rot the crops, ruining food supplies across the country, which is why they're burned right here. They press both of your pinkies together before crossing both of your ring fingers down over them and placing your middle fingers on top to shape the snake's head. Then curve your index fingers forward so they form the front of the face, and position your thumbs underneath so it looks like the lower jaw. Now squeeze everything together to create one wide triangular shape. Then give it a quick forward snap so the jaws open and strike. Press both of your pinkies together. Squirt the white glue on the leaf, then add black paper for eyes and a mouth. Leave it to dry until the glue turns clear. Next, peel it off in one piece, and when you press it onto a window, it'll cling to the glass on its own. Squirt the white glue on the leaf, then they tacked the stuffing onto the column, connecting each clump to a hidden wire. After that, they built a 1/12 scale house and attached the walls to a sandbag. Then they built a tiny palm tree, tying the top to a wire. They repeated this until they had a mini LA street. Then the clumps on the column were lifted up with wires. And when they blasted the houses with air cannons, the sandbags yanked the walls back as the wires bent the trees, creating the illusion of a nuke destroying Los Angeles. They tacked the stuffing. When you cut off the root of an onion, it releases chemicals that hit your eyes and turn into acid, which makes you cry as you chop. Instead, leave the root and cut off the top. Slice the onion in half vertically, then flip each half so the flat side is down before peeling off the skin. Next, make vertical cuts toward the root on each half without cutting through it, and make horizontal cuts the same way. Finally, slice across to release the diced pieces, leaving the root behind while your eyes stay dry. When you cut off the The moment you ordered a pizza, a 30-minute timer started. Workers rushed to cook it, so the driver had enough time to deliver it. And if it took more than 30 minutes, the customer got it for free. Now, some drivers drove like madmen just to beat the clock. And over time, crashes started happening. Some pedestrians were killed, and their families sued. Juries agreed the promotion was dangerous, and after millions in settlements and over a dozen deaths, Domino's finally ended the promotion. The moment if you look straight at the sun during an eclipse, the light gets focused onto the back of your eye. But since it's so bright, it sets off a chemical reaction in the cells that pick up light. And if you stare for too long, this can actually kill them. And if a doctor looks at your eye, since the cells that the eclipse hit are damaged, they can see the shape of the light that burned them, showing which phase of the eclipse you were looking at. If you look straight, lift your right heel and shift your weight onto your toes while you turn your body, sliding your left foot out to the side. And as it comes around in a half circle, switch your weight onto your left foot while turning your body again and sliding your right foot in another half circle. If you repeat this while moving side to side, you'll look like you're gliding in perfect circles around the floor. Lift your right. She pushed the desks aside and placed a student at the door to watch anyone coming. Then she warned the others to put their phones away. Next, she told 2 students to face each other and gave them 30 seconds to fight. When the fight ended, another pair faced off, throwing punches that left them bleeding. But one student secretly filmed the whole thing and showed it to officials, and the teacher was fired and charged. She pushed the desks aside. When their leader died, they sat up his body and placed him over a fire. Next, they poked his skin with sticks, cutting tiny openings to drain out the fluids. Over the next 3 months, the smoke slowly dried out his tissues, killing any bacteria inside. Then they covered his skin with a special clay, and when they were finished, they placed the mummy in a small hut, where it has lasted for over 200 years in perfect condition. When their leader died, draw a slanted number 1 before adding a 2, which should touch the top and about 3/4 down the line of the 1. Next, draw a 3 that stretches all the way over both the 1 and the 2. Add a small 4 at the bottom point, then 2 tiny 5s part way above the 3. Finally, draw a 6 inside the top of the 3 and a 7 on the outside to make a bird out of numbers. Draw a slant. The pole was inserted before making a circle 70 feet across. Then they cut around it with a chainsaw, separating one giant slab of ice. Now the whole disc could float on its own, so they rigged a small boat motor onto the ice and used it to push against the water, slowly spinning the entire frozen circle. They lit a bonfire on top and went around in circles. The pole was inserted before. As the spoon touches your tongue, metal contacts complete a circuit to the food, and a tiny battery inside the handle sends a weak electric current running through the food and into your taste buds. This concentrates the salt signals right on your tongue, so your taste buds send a stronger signal to your brain, and this makes the food taste like it's been salted, even though no extra salt was added. As the spoon